First of all, welcome to Beyond the Brief, and thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you.
Okay, so before we dive in, I would request you to please introduce yourself for the audience.
I'm Rajat Shandilya, and I'm currently a PhD candidate in law from Symbiosis International University, Pune. And I'm also associated with the Center for United Nations Studies at the Jindal Global Law School, OP Jindal Global University, as a research assistant. And my core areas of interest lie in criminal law and criminal justice, and that is where I'm currently working into.
Right, sir. Sir, so I know that you have always wanted to be a teacher. I read your last post on LinkedIn. But sir, how did law enter the picture? How did you decide that you want to be into legal academia per se?
Since, see, there are two, three factors that inspired me right from the starting. See, I come from a legal background. Fortunately, I'm a second generation lawyer. So, seeing that right from the starting, your father arguing, preparing case briefs, and then, telling you what is to be done the next day in court. So, that has always been a factor that has motivated me, right from the starting to be into law. And when you talk about me being into academics, particularly as I'm going to be very soon now, so the thing was that, as I mentioned in the last story as well, in the post that I shared over my LinkedIn profile, that this started in class ninth when I
Right.
wanted, to be into social science domain. And when my teacher in the class asked that, what do you want to be in life, Rajat? So that is where I believe that I understood that I'm someone who could do better into, the social science domain, because science and commerce were never my calling. And since I believe that it's not only you, but it's also the kind of background you come from. See, I have a pure social science background at home also. My mother is a postgraduate in social science field, my father is himself a lawyer. So that depends, I believe that more than your skills, the background also matters. So this has
Right.
been the story of me being into law and into academics.
Right, but did is there a story or a teacher who inspired you to be a teacher? I mean, you mentioned your father being an advocate. So even if you decided to go into law, being a second generation lawyer, why not litigation and why academics? I mean, is there someone who inspired you?
See, Rashmi, what happens is, when you come from a family who's into litigation already, right? You very closely observe everything, right?
Yes.
Right from the daily routine to, what is to be done, the pros and cons, and then you balance it according to your, personality. And, this is very, true fact that not everyone's the same, right?
Hmm.
Maybe what is comfortable for you professionally might not be comfortable for me, for that matter,
True.
right? What might interest you might not be of my interest. So what happens is that I analyzed this thing right from the very, early stage, as I mentioned in my class ninth or 10th, that I cannot be a full-time litigator. Reason being that I know that what kind of an individual I am. I'm
Hmm.
more comfortable in a closed setup, and where and why I choose academics was also one of the reasons that my mother, since you asked that who was that one teacher who inspired me. So my mother always has driven me towards this field of academics, because she was very keen into academics and teaching when she was a student back 25-30 years back. So from there, it really inspired me to be into this setup of being into an academics kind of an individual, and then doing well in it. And this is what I planned right from my third semester, that I'm going to write extensively. And this is what is helping me eventually, when you see it now, 4 5 years 6 years down the line, this has immensely helped me to be into academics as such.
Absolutely. So, but according to my limited experience, what I think is, particularly when we talk about legal academia, teachers who have had the on-field exposure tend to deliver better, especially in subjects like criminal law, IPC, CRPC. So I have a story. Actually, we had a faculty. He was obviously a guest faculty and an advocate. So the way he delivered IPC lectures were very different from the one who delivered CRPC lectures, who is a core, academician. So, do you think that is an important factor?
Yes, me that is actually a very important factor, and this is why we are seeing you even UGC taking advanced step in this regard. We see the now the culture of the professor of practice, as we call, to be at a boom. There are people who are hiring industrial experts specifically in their domain. Let's take an example that if there is a class on, let's say, IPR. So what is happening right now in the academic industry is that people tend to go to a professional rather. Let's take an example that a person who is telling you how to initiate a trademark proceeding, right? So an academician will only tell you that there is, you have to approach the website first, then do the filing, and then so on and so forth. But when it comes to on the contrast, when it comes to the industrial expert who has had the very specific experience practically, what he will tell you is that when you approach the websites, these are the things that you need to take care of. Right,
Right.
you will have this window open or this
Hmm.
dialog box coming in front of you, which will demand these documents from you and so on and so forth. This is not my domain, but I'm just giving you an example.
Yes.
So this happens. Now what this differentiation comes by the fact that he has seen it firsthand. An academician might have the bookish knowledge or the theoretical knowledge of it, but an industrial expert will give you what actually happens on field, or when you go on to handle that situation. So this difference is very well understood by the University Grants Commission also. And now there has been recent amendments also, which is given room for you being into as professor of practice and taking classes at various institutions. So this is, I think, a very welcome step. And rather than academicians seeing it as a competition, I would say it would be great if we could see it as a collaborative approach for the betterment of students who are coming in.
Definitely, in any domain, if we see something as collaboration rather than competition, it is definitely going to be more fruitful and beneficial. And
Exactly.
just like IPR, I remember being taught bail provision. So when the guest faculty was an advocate was teaching us bail, he would tell us कि इस provision में है ऐसे ऐसे होता है, and then you take that paper, go to the jail, get those formalities, and so he'll tell you all the formalities. But someone who has been into the core academics will tell you this is the provision. In this case, you can get bail from magistrate. In this case, you can go.
Exactly.
Look, there's a difference. There's a huge difference which we as students can feel and experience.
See, this is very simple. जो field पे रहा है, he will definitely have a better experience. I'm
Definitely.
not saying that the professor won't teach you. He'll teach you suffice means good enough to for your knowledge. But the person who's been on field will definitely give you better practical insights rather than theoretical.
Right. So I think for students who genuinely want to be into legal academia, need to be into research definitely, but they also need to have practical knowledge through internships or a brief period if they can do on a field job. And we'll go further into the students who want what steps should one take if they want to be into academics. But before that, I want to ask you a bit uh, I don't know, difficult question, I think. But, and it's very unfortunate, but truth that today legal academia is seen as a backup option. I see a lot of my friends who are giving CLAT PG and appearing for, going for LLM, but they're preparing for judiciary or something else, UPSC maybe. If I fail in this, then I have the backup option of legal academy. I see very, very seldom students taking legal academy as their first option. So, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, in this regard, I am an exception because right from very starting, I want to be into academics. Means I wanted to teach only, and I wanted to be into academics. See, this is very, very true that there are instances where people take academics or legal academia for that matter to be a second backup option, right? This is
Yes,
very true. But I am slightly on a different path because for me, it was always the first option.
yes,
So now you understand that I'll take a slightly longer on this to explain and to give my take. So what happens is that, there are two things. When you know that there is something called judiciary, which is, itself a very respectable and very, lucrative career for that matter. So we understand that, यार ये कर लेंगे ना तो we'll, life set हो जाएगी and all
hmm,
these narratives come in. Then
yes,
what happens is that this is also a factual reality that not everyone who prepares gets through. Okay, I'm not demotivating anyone, but this is a reality which we all have
Definitely.
to accept. Okay, so now what mentality hits that individual or hits anyone for that matter is that we need to have something कि अगर ये नहीं हुआ तो what we'll do, where we'll go. So now with a lot of students at the young age choosing law at the as the first hand career option. I'm not saying into judiciary or competitive,
Hmm.
as the first hand career option at the very inception of after they pass their graduation or class 12 for that matter. What happens is that with this increasing number of students there is an increasing demands of teacher, so this option is always kept open.
Hmm.
If you are failing or if you are unfortunately not able to qualify, you always have this option of being into academics. So
True.
but honestly telling you, there are few people like me who also have it as their first option,
Of
and for
course.
them. Hmm,
Yes.
and for them, see, everyone has a different perspective, right? You see lives in different way. It's not about me coming here speaking and just going away. It's about different perspectives, and I hope that this is one of your objectives also. You've taken this initiative, and I wish you all the best that you bring in all the different perspective from the industry.
Right.
So see, it's very subjective. For me, as academics was the first option, I knew that I have to go for a LLB,
Hmm.
and I did my LLM straight without any gap from general. My graduation is from Faculty of Law, Aligarh Muslim University, from 18 to 23. Then 23, 24, I did immediately did my LLM from General Global Law School itself in the next successive batch, and then immediately after that, I have switched to Symbiosis for my PhD.
Right.
Reason being, see, there are different dynamics. Once you want to be into academics, PhD I would say is a must requirement. I'm
Hmm.
not saying that it is at the very first instance is important, but everyone who has to make it into academics would go and prefer for a PhD any day. This is a
Right.
established requirement already. So now you understand that when these are the requirements and you want to be a teacher. So it is very important to keep a check on your time and your age as well.
Hmm.
Okay.
Right.
Because see, I don't, sideline age as such. To be honest, I'm very particular about all these things. I want to have a settled career by 27, 28. And this is something, there might be subjective opinion also, but this is what I feel,
Yes.
right? There are people and professionals who do PhD at a later stage. Okay. But this is where I would say that, there is a requirement of certain amount of clarity. If you
Right.
want to be into academics, why not make it, in the first go itself? Why not,
Definitely.
gather that courage for first initial years while you are in a flow of studying and then make the most out of it. I'm
Hmm.
not saying that doing a PhD or enter into academics is a negative option at a later stage. But if you want to make it in the first go, why not do it first hand only in the first go? So this is what my take is, but again, there are subjective opinions and there are different people who might answer this question in different way. This is my particular take on this one.
Definitely. I just wanted to know your perspective since you have always wanted to be into academics and talking about age and those.
And I'm very sure that there are very less people like me who want to enter academics in the as their first career option,
Right.
because there are a lot of large section of people and professionals who say कि अब LLM masters हो गई अब PhD कौन करे. It's a tiring process, 3 years, 4 years. But see, it's at the end, it's rewarding. You get that title, and believe me, there is nothing more satisfactory than having a doctor in front of your name.
Right. So actually, 5 years of law school, some might have even a drop, and then 2 years of LLM, then entering into
Yes,
PhD for again 4 to 5 years. It's a bit long journey, and some might not even have the opportunity to give in those years. They might
yes,
have
yes,
responsibilities or something else. But in our generation, especially those who are law students who have just graduated, we all want very quick, we want to be into it very quick. We don't want to wait for years, like to be 30, 35 to settle in. So definitely that is
that is the reason I did not take any break or any drop, and I'm convinced regularly studying one after the other.
right. Sir, being into academics or any legal, like
Any field.
any usme,
I'm
in legal field, we need to study for the whole life. That is the one thing for sure. But someone
Doctors
who
and
is
lawyers don't have an exception to study. They have to
true,
study every single day.
right? Sir, but somebody who generally want to be into this field, a student who, just entered the law school or in their second or third year, and now they have decided that they want to be into legal academia. How should they plan their 5 years of law school and after that?
Specifically into academics, right?
Definitely, yes, sir.
Yeah. So see, I have been a very restless. I'll tell you my story because that will, definitely give path to a lot of people, I believe.
Right.
I'm not a celebrity, but this is just my take to guide whatever people it reaches to. Okay. So what happens is that when you enter a law school, right? I was very fortunate that I did my graduation from my hometown itself, being a
Mm.
central university. Everyone knows, and I belong to Aligarh only, so it was very feasible for me to be at my home and do my bachelor's first of all. Now I'll tell you a short story. I'll take a while of yours.
Sure, sure, sir.
See, when we navigate through the law school, right, it's important that we have mind to be open and clear. And when I say open and clear, you should know where you want to be eventually. I'm not saying that everyone has that clarity right from the starting, or if I had, then everyone is expected to be of that matter. No, that this is not possible because everyone has a different background and has a different personality, right? So once you enter the law school, you get that overwhelming response. You want to do internships also, you want to write papers also, you want to enjoy that social life also, and you want to make friends, you want to make contacts. As
Right.
we call that, references and contacts are very important in the legal industry, right? Now these things, or this particular point that I mentioned, might have a twofold approach. When I say contacts and references, some people might take it negatively, some people might take it positively. But what I meant here is that the more connected you are in the industry, the better opportunities you're. It is likely that you are going to be landed into good opportunities, and
Definitely.
this is something which is very true and very
Most
correct.
certainly.
Yes, if you ask any professional, he cannot deny that networking is not important. I would consider that person to be someone who already has attained that amount of success and maturity that he pretends to have in that particular statement. But I don't believe that, certainly. Okay, now coming to the second aspect, when you enter, you are getting overwhelmed by the responses. Number two is that you know this industry exposure that we talked about a little while ago is important, and that could be not completely as a student, but that could certainly be achieved, I believe, by internships. Okay, so when I give you my story of being a student and doing internships, right, my time was a COVID time, unfortunately.
Mm.
Everything was closed. So, in my personal capacity, I made sure and I promised myself कि जितना हो पाएगा I'll do it from my side. And as a result, I ended up with 26 internships eventually when I ended up my law school in my graduation. ठीक है, अब you will say how can someone do 26 internships, sir? Because this is very common question that I've been asked,
Yeah.
all over again. Okay, so I'm just, if you see my CV, right? There were people who criticized me for doing it.
Mm.
I'll tell you a very honest story. Okay, there is no possibility that you always gets praised,
Mm.
or you
Right.
will get praised every now and then. This is not possible in the at least in the legal industry. Trust me, right? So what I did was I made sure that I applied to every internship opportunity or every possible office that I could.
Mm.
But before that, it's important that you identify that you want to go into corporate, you want to go into litigation. This is something which I believe that in the first couple of years of your law school becomes fairly clear in your mind.
Right.
So what my approach was, this could be helpful for a lot of people who might watch this session, is that whenever you're applying to a particular internship, make sure that you apply at least 4 to 5 months or 6 months in advance. Why I'm saying this? Because there are a lot of people who even approach me now that, sir, we need an internship, लगवा दीजिए. This is not the right way. ठीक है, just because I have done it, this doesn't mean that कि you ask me for a Supreme Court internship and I might get it for you. This is not the right way. Okay, you have to be sincere and you have to be professional while you're approaching an individual.
This is
Be it
not
me
how
or be it
you
anyone.
use your connection.
Exactly. there has to be certain reputation that you build. There is some conversation that you build with an individual, be
Right.
it me or be it anyone else. This is a very objective kind of answer, and everyone in the industry would answer it the same way.
Yes.
Okay. And now, see, once you apply that, you have that window of 5 months or 6 months, you have that time to even search for greater opportunities. So what I did was that I promised myself. See, it's very hard, to be honest. I did very, very hard to, reach here where I am today, and I'm very proud of it. Reason being that I was very particular that I have to make the most out of this COVID time.
Mm.
Okay, there are two again. COVID time was utilized by a lot of people like me,
Yes.
and it was unfortunately wasted by a lot of people which I know, and they now regret it.
Hmm.
In one way or the other. So for me, it was like every month I have to do an internship, no matter what. You count it, you don't count it, but there is at least something that I learn out of it.
True.
Okay, I started with approaching, I did a very sincere district court internship right in my, I think, February 2019, way back. And despite of the fact that my father was working in the same court, I decided to do it with someone else.
Hmm.
Right. Reason being, you cannot learn from your father.
True. Very true.
The practical aspects, I'm not saying it in a negative way that you cannot learn from your father. What I meant was that the practical skills that you will learn from a third party,
Hmm.
right? Who will not consider you to be your relative or your son or your acquaintance for that matter, will treat you like any other person who is outside your known area.
I've heard this from everyone who is a second generation lawyer that first go and
Yes.
intern with a third person.
Yes, someone else.
Yes.
And when I say you cannot learn from your father, which this means that he will always have a soft corner
Soft
from for
corner.
you.
Right.
So that soft corner really doesn't work, right?
True.
Until and unless you get that hammering from the other person, you get that, sort of scolding, you get that harshness.
Yes.
This is
The time
you.
you cannot take a leave, you need to reach there by that time.
Ah,
Yes.
mhm.
The
So
discipline
these
you
are all
learn,
very,
right?
a very important thing when we talk about this particular aspect. Okay. And there is no harm, in interning under your own father, right? This is not a problem, but I would not particularly suggest it.
Hmm.
But yes, once you are through with the concepts, you know what is the procedure. Okay, you know your domain looks like, then you can definitely assist. And now after I've registered, I've helped my father in a lot of cases, right? And
Hmm.
we've fortunately done well. So even though I'm not practicing, but I help him back and forth every
You
now and then when
can,
I get time.
yeah, you can do that
So this
anytime.
not only gets me keeps me connected to the litigation sector, but also gives my understanding in my research area a broader perspective, because my father also practices in the criminal side only.
Okay.
So this discussion, every now and then becomes really helpful and really healthy for us, right?
True.
So now coming to your second point, that how to navigate. Now, once you see, this mentality is very important. Once you think it here and you know what is to be done, you're already half there. This is
Hmm.
what I feel, right? I was very, very sure. See, there was a time when even I worked for over 18 hours. People won't believe it, but I can say that this is true.
Hmm.
But whatever I did back then is now, bearing fruits for me. It is really, really helping me, and people have respected me for that. And I'm very happy. Okay. And I am not saying that you compromise on your health. Take days off whenever it is required. Plan your things accordingly. Plan your day accordingly. Because see, even if I stress to an extent, that doesn't mean that everyone who is there can work for 17, 18 hours. And I'm not promoting toxic work culture or extended working hours. I'm not
Right.
promoting that. Everyone has their individual capacity, right?
I
So
heard,
now
I'm so
when
sorry to,
Hmm.
interrupt you, but I just want to mention a point here. As you mentioned, working for 18 hours a day.
I
And
did
then
that, yes.
immediately we need to clarify that, oh, I'm not promoting this, but this is just what I have done. So I heard a interview podcast of Mr. Rohit Shetty, where he mentioned that back in those
Double
days,
shift में
what
काम
we
किया, मैंने
yeah,
सुना
what we
हुआ है.
used to say, hard work is now counted as struggle. So if you say someone that I have worked for 18 hours, they won't see it as your hard work. It will be viewed as a struggle or maybe something that is a toxic culture.
That is why I clarified no immediately. I'm not promoting it. You
Yeah.
work according to your capacity. But see,
But you
I
need
am
to
not.
push yourself.
Huh. But I'll tell you the after story of it. Once you get established, no, you know that you're established. You've done something at least which will, give you a stable future.
Hmm.
Then there is also a need to stabilize. Okay. Let's take an example. I'm pursuing my PhD. I've just started,
Hmm.
right? Okay. So now, if I say that no, I am going to do my entire PhD research in a year and I'll finish it off. This is not possible because the minimum duration is 3 years,
Hmm.
right? So now, when I know that I have the duration of 3 years, I'll plan it in the same way. Now there is no need to rush. If I do it systematically, 3 years are more than enough.
Hmm.
And people have done it. 3 years, 3.5 years is more than enough for a PhD if you're doing it sincerely full time,
Right.
not engaging in any other thing, or not giving your time to any other specific area apart from
Hmm.
your research and your PhD.
Hmm.
This is very practically possible, right? Now, once you know your internships in your area, now now this is something that I'm going to emphasize upon: build your connections in the positive light. Okay. Have a LinkedIn ID. This is very important, having a LinkedIn ID, right? LinkedIn has fetched me a lot of opportunities, to be honest. Now my count has gone, in excess of 20,000. But, initially when you build that, this is a very difficult thing to, build upon. People often, message me and ask, sir, start kiya hai, kaise kare?
Hmm.
Trust me, starting is always the hardest.
I can vouch for it. I
Me
only have
personally,
around 6K followers, but I know LinkedIn is so, so, so important.
it's very, see, it takes a lot of time initially to even understand the algorithm of LinkedIn, how it is
Yes.
responding, where is your, what is your target audience, then which are the people who are, actually engaging with your content and with
Yes.
your posts. This is very, very important to identify.
True.
Right. So building connections is what this will do is that not only this will give you a fair idea of what the industry trends look like, what is the hiring process, what is the current demand of the industry, but also it will get you close to people professionally where who can help you grow as an
Yes.
individual and as a professional both. I've
Hmm.
had a number of see in my case what happens is that since my circle is an academic circle, usually what happens is that I have friends and colleagues or what I have had a lot of senior colleagues as well.
Hmm.
So when you fortunately I would say that my group or my circle that I have is of people who are 10 years 15 years senior to me,
Hmm.
right? So now this is very important when you have that, you have that group who is there to guide you कि नहीं रजत ऐसे नहीं ऐसे करना
Right.
है ना? So you have a lot of perspectives in place कि नहीं इसको अगर मैं ऐसे करूंगा यहाँ गलती हो जाएगी, एंड इफ आई डू समथिंग द अदर वे अराउंड,
Hmm.
this will give me a different perspective, different line of thought. So this understanding is very important.
Right.
And after you build your connection, I was telling you that now in the senior years when you get, right, these connections, these skills would eventually help you in navigating towards a job. And that depends, it is very subjective that you want to go for an LLM or even higher studies, or you want to go into corporate firms, or for that matter litigation chambers. So this is how you understand first the trend in the initial years. Then you build yourself through internships, through writing research papers, and engaging in various competitions as I did. And then it is very important to harness all these the skills and the connections that you have towards your later years, which is the fourth and the fifth year, where eventually are going to end up, and then you plan to start your career as a professional. So this was it.
Right, sir. Sir, so what is the importance of research? You mentioned about writing research paper quite a few times before we dived into this. But what is the importance of research for students and academicians?
See, Rashmi, research, or particularly legal research, is something which is inseparable, in the legal
Very
profession.
true, very true.
Either you are into academics, either you are into, the hardcore
Litigation.
litigation property, or you are even in a law firm. Law firm also do a lot of researchers. They hire
Hmm.
independent researchers, or they have specific positions for researcher, right? So our research would, obviously there is an importance of having researchers in the team when you're specifically looking for something, or a particular point of law. But I believe that on a personal note also research helps you a lot. It widens your perspective. by something which is there in one way. When you research and when you go deep into the topic or the point of law or whatever the point, the question is, you understand that there can be and there are actually multiple ways of doing the same thing.
Right.
Your approach widens. See, I have had an experience of writing over 30 plus published paper right now. Okay, so now what happens is that you understand that, see, this is the initial amount of research that I've done. This is my initial draft. Now, beyond that, there are something which is required to improve it, to get it published in a good way or in at a good platform.
Hmm.
Okay, so not only research gives you, you know, the core understanding of a particular topic that you're researching upon, but also it widens your perspective, in my opinion, when you talk about this, and when you talk about the importance of research in academics. There is specific research required because we as academicians are required to write a lot of
Yes.
papers, or attend a lot of conferences and seminars, and then present it accordingly, write reports, give proposals over various points of law. So it varies from industry to industry, but being a good researcher is the core quality that you need to have as a law professional, be it a law student or a law professional for that matter.
You know, I know it is very, very important to write research papers, and into academics, it is very, very important. But even otherwise, you need to have published papers. But for
Exactly.
me, knowing this from very first year, I've tried to write papers. I don't know, for some reason, I never end up completing it. I have only two
Why?
published papers. I like to research. I'll do all the research. I'll get the material. But
Hmm.
when that points come when I need to pen it down and write into a research paper, I have my own points also. It's not something that I cannot analyze it, or I don't have a perspective. But writing a research paper is a tedious task for me. I mean, it's very boring, I would say.
Hmm.
In fact, on the flip side, I'm very active on moot court. Like, I am very happy to make moot court memorials to argue that that is fine. But writing a research paper or a piece of, article or something is a bit boring for me. I'm so sorry to be.
That is no problem. This is very subjective. See, that is where your calling comes in, right?
Yeah,
I knew I had to be into academics, and I love writing papers.
right.
Okay, and fortunately, by the grace of Almighty, I've been really, really fortunate that I have got various, opportunities to judge moot courts and various other competitions. So I've had that fair experience of where the inclination of students lie.
Yes.
So see, this is very subjective. There is nothing to be sorry about it. See, everyone has I told you right in the starting, everyone is built different, has a different personality and different perspectives. So this is very subjective, and you can happily differ. There's no problem in it.
But what about students who want to be into legal academia but are active in moot court circuits or something and not really into research papers?
No, research papers and writing something is compulsory if you want to be into academia.
Okay.
It is a non-negotiable skill that we call it, or a non-negotiable requirement, I would say.
Right.
If you ask not only me, you ask any academician for that matter, he or she won't disagree to my point. Being into academics requires rigorous research skills and lot of writing. And
Right.
writing doesn't only mean that you write something and it immediately gets published. No, this is not the reality.
Hmm.
When you submit a particular paper, it goes first stage, it goes for a review, then it gets accepted or rejected based on the
Hmm.
quality. If it gets accepted, they might ask you, or the publisher might ask you for repeated revisions, not only
Yes.
one time but multiple times, right?
Right.
Edit this part, remove this part, add this part, okay, subtract this part. So these are, there is a lot of technicality going into that. So for me, I would say, if you want to, if they're active, that is good. But eventually, if your goal is going into legal academia, you have to channelize everything.
Yes.
If you're doing moods, that is okay. But I'll only do two moods. But focus, if you are willing to go into academics, right? Make sure that you're doing two moods and you are writing four papers or three papers a year, not more than that.
Hmm.
Because then, you know, if you are starting, that is okay. You get experience from wherever you want.
Hmm.
Okay, but then eventually, as it is in my case right now, I have become very, very selective when it comes to writing. Because means right now at this point, I have that experience. I know that where I have to publish, where I don't have to publish.
Right.
Okay, and which are the journals that I can target, which are the journals that I have to leave behind and go forward. So this approach is fairly balancing things would certainly help a lot of people.
True. The pros and cons of legal
Hmm.
academician, this profession.
Legal,
Because someone who wants to
okay.
make a decision needs
So
to
this
know
is
both the
very,
sides.
tricky as so first I'll go with the positives because I am myself being into academics now very soon. See, number one, you don't have to run. You
Hmm.
take it positive or negative, that's a different perspective, but you don't have to run around courts.
Hmm.
Okay, it's a comfortable desk job or for that matter, a very comforting job, I would say.
Yes.
Okay, you just go to the institution, you have certain dedicated hours to give.
Hmm.
Okay, I'm not demeaning any other domain of the legal field for that matter. This is just my very honest and very, very specific perspective that I want to give here. You don't have to, you have fixed working hours, and you know that if I am getting, I'm done with my job by 5, there is not extra amount of that litigation 9, 10. So that work-life balance is certainly, I would say, is much better into
Hmm.
legal academia when we talk about that. Okay. Number two is that, it gives you a sort of stability. And when I say stability, then see, financially there is no limit. Everyone wants to earn well and get settled, right? It's a well-paying and respectable job. Number one, it gives you these are my 3 points that I almost tell everyone who asks me why academia, Rajat.
Yes.
So okay, so first of all, the first thing is, see, for me at least, my family time is very important.
Hmm.
I need to sit with my parents. I need to talk with my, cousins and everyone. This is very, very important because I don't have much time, after everything left. So I prefer giving it to my family all in all. Okay. So what I feel is, and what I understand is that you are being paid really well.
Hmm.
Okay. If you're qualified, trust me, the money won't be a problem into academics. Okay. Number two, you have that respect that you are an academician, you're called a professor for that matter, right? Or a researcher or an associate researcher or whatever the position is, being into academics. Number three is that you always have that, I talked about money, I talked about time, and I talk now the third thing is that respect that I am talking right now.
Hmm.
That you are always going to be looked with a respectable eye in the society.
True.
Okay, for that matter, if I become a professor tomorrow, if kya, I will certainly become very soon.
Absolutely.
So what? Yeah. So but now there are people. Now what the society would be? Yeah, okay, this person is a professor. Now he's
Hmm.
doing well. Okay. So there are again, this is very subjective. Some people might say money is important, but see, for me, satisfaction is important. If at
Right.
the end of the day, I'm sitting at my place and I'm justifying myself that Rajat, you've done sufficient for the day, this is it. This is life for me, to be honest.
Hmm.
I'm not going to slog myself, out for now at least, because when I've established that there was a time as I talked about, 16 hours, 18 hours, but now when I'm established and I know I'm doing well, I'm
Hmm.
satisfied with this. And when you talk about the negatives, again, the people who are, more after money and they want to earn lakhs and lakhs of rupees, trust me, in the initial years, academia won't fetch you that much. There is a certain limitation that you get.
Hmm.
1 lakh, 1.5 lakh. This is very subjective. I might not open up and speak on this, but in the initial years also, and it takes time. Very, first con is, if you ask me, there is no con of academics as such, but if one negative or one, slightly dimming part, if you ask me, it is very time consuming.
Yes. But so
Whether
is
while in
litigation.
profession you yeah, so is litigation, but I'm telling you in terms of study.
Hmm.
Even if you can start litigation immediately after your be LLB, or for that matter BLLB, or whichever course you
Hmm.
pursue, but into academics at least your masters and your net is required.
Yes.
Okay, and eventually, if you want to establish yourself into academia, you have to do a PhD. It is something which cannot be negotiated upon. You
Yes.
have to have a PhD.
Hmm.
So this time is, I believe, that is which is something which is there to, break an individual. If you
Hmm.
don't have patience, very rarely can survive into academics.
Hmm.
So this is it from my.
Right. Okay. So I just want,
And
I just
again, just
asked
a
this question
disclaimer
because
towards the end that this is very subjective. Yeah. Just a disclaimer towards the end. This is very subjective, and these are my personal opinion. I have nothing to disrespect with anyone who's watching this or who will be watching this.
yes, I know there are no really big cons, but I just asked this question to, who students who are yet to make a decision, they need to know both sides of it before making a decision. So that
Yeah,
is
I
important
understand.
for them.
Yeah.
So now, one of my most favorite question is, if you had the chance to, overhaul the legal education system, what is the first change you would make?
I'll just make one change, and that will bring very, important, for that matter, alterations and changes automatically. I'll make legal education accessible for all.
Hmm.
I'll equalize the fees, or I'll just come. If I have that power, right? I'll make sure that the accessibility is looked into. Reason being, see, everyone has a different financial background, right?
Yes.
And trust me, there is no shortage of talent in India.
Hmm.
Okay, it's just about your financial condition, and it is just about your accessibility to, your resources or your legal education that differs.
Yes.
And see, this there is a NLU versus non-NLU debate always going on.
All the
This is
time.
very common. So I believe that, yeah, okay, and see, everyone might have a different take on this, but just one single change I want to make, which is to make education accessible for all.
So actually, legal education is very expensive. Even if you look into government, government-run institutes, legal education is not affordable for a lot of people. When we see the fee structure of NLUs, it's very high, even for a middle class family. And then,
Yesterday, I was seeing this LinkedIn post where the fees of, I think, which this Goa one, new Bar Council's
mm,
IUELR is the name of the
yes,
institution, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. So now the fees is going up to 38, 40 lakhs. So this is something to be considered, right? I'm not saying that I'm against them. They can do. They are an independent institution, but for me, it is unreasonably high. There has to be some rationale behind it.
so you know what the irony is, even after paying this hefty amount, uh, in most
There is no
tier 2
guarantee of
institutes,
settlement.
we again need to have some certificate courses, extra diploma courses. I mean, it's never enough.
So this happens. This is a sad reality, I would say. You don't have stipend also for legal interns, right?
Oh,
You might get it, you might not get it, but there is no, specific guideline for it.
right.
So I am not saying that this stipend thing is important, but at least give the intern or the particular student this much that he could barely survive, at least 5-10,000, at least that he could manage his living to some extent.
So 5-10,000 is a luxury. Even if we are getting paid for, the transportation charges are covered, that is also enough. But we don't get that in even.
That is what I am saying. No. Right.
True. So we have talked about having the clarity right from the beginning, or at least in a couple of years, initial years. But for those who are yet to decide on their legal career path, because some of us are not from the legal background, and for us to enter into law school and then decide might take a bit of a time, and it is also very confusing because when we go to intern, we see it takes at least 2 to 3 years to intern in every domain, like possible career options, and then to decide is a very confusing and a difficult task. So, what is your advice to students who are yet to decide their career path?
See, number one is your calling. I would say I am not giving any weightage to the academic background. First of all, ask yourself, why do you want to do it?
Hmm.
Do you really want to do it? This is one thing. You won't believe I've seen people dropping out in their fourth year and fifth year as well. You call it fortunate or unfortunate. See, I call it fortunate. You ask me why? Because at least they knew that this law thing is not their calling.
Hmm.
And the same people are now doing wonderful in their, being an entrepreneur as such.
Hmm.
They're making multiple times than they would have, actually made in the legal profession right in the starting.
Yes.
So, see, number one, I'm not bringing anything of academic rigor, academic credentials as such. I'll give one parameter, that is to ask yourself why and do you really want to do it?
Hmm.
Because if you have this clarity, right from the starting, कि मुझे क्यों कोई चीज करनी है, मुझे law क्यों करनी है, या why do I want to, be into the legal sphere, the rest of the clarity will follow.
Right.
Okay, then comes in your financial status as well.
Hmm.
Now, when I say financial status, this is a very, very, with, this overwhelming cost of fees, and, the fee structure that you have seen right now, it is very important to plan your finances accordingly. Okay. And then comes in your academic credentials, that do you really have that cutoff, or do you have, you really have that rigor and you have that skill set to, qualify a good examination, and then, go on to pursue your, law as such.
Hmm.
So this clarity is very important. Okay. And this is something, sort of a moral point that I'm making here. Never ever disregard your parents in this matter. ठीक है, parents won't ever, think something which is against you, and they won't ever want something which they, see, for me, to be honest, I only believe that people, or I would say, only there are two people who will always want that you do better than them, which are your parents, your mother and your father. No one else in the world
Completely
would,
agree.
support you and really want. Huh. So it might sound to be a, sort of moral lecture for you, but this was something that I felt, and I,
It it is very
found
important.
mentioning.
Yes.
Okay. So now, and see, once you have this clarity, now trust me, 50% of your journey is covered. And then you could navigate accordingly, that, what are your interest area once you complete your first year, second year.
Hmm.
From second year onwards, you can navigate.
Yes.
For me, I had this clarity right from the starting, which is rare. I understand that part. But even if you are starting afresh and you don't have a background as such, you can start navigating your path right from the second year itself. That yes, this is the area I'm interested into, because 3 or 4 semester gives you a fair idea of where you want to be.
Right.
Right.
And
So
I
this
think
is it.
being active on
This is
LinkedIn and talking
hmm.
to a lot of people will also help you a lot in deciding your career path.
LinkedIn is again something which is not to be negotiated upon.
Yes. So thank you so much, sir. It was wonderful talking to you.